Hey guys, welcome to another episode. Today we are still going to be talking about the Sonos Roam. Why? Because the last unboxing and the first thoughts we didn't actually cover in detail, and one of the signature features of this channel is that we actually do frequency sweeps of the speakers that we test, so that not only you're just relying on what we are telling you, but you can also see for yourself how the speakers sound through very objective measures. And in today's episode, not only we're going to be talking about how these sound, we're going to explore whether there are sonic differences between a Bluetooth connection or an Airplay 2 connection to these speakers. Stay tuned. If you don't already know, these Sonos Roam speakers, they are newly released by Sonos. For those of you who are interested, you should be able to pre-order them now and get them in your hands by the 21st of April. So today, let's take a look at the connection capability of the Sonos Roam. So the Sonos Roam, like the Sonos Move, you are able to connect to it via the regular Wi-Fi mode. It is first and foremost a Wi-Fi speaker, but same as the Sonos Roam, it also allows connection via Bluetooth. I will touch on the Bluetooth topic in another day because there are things that you can do or you can't do with Bluetooth on this speaker. But because it's a new speaker, there's a lot to cover. I can't do everything in one episode. I'll save that for another day. For those of you who are interested, please subscribe, leave a like on this video so that YouTube knows to recommend it to you when the video drops. So the two connectivity options, first Bluetooth, second Wi-Fi. I'll talk about the Bluetooth bit first. Now for Bluetooth connectivity, what happens is that you have a phone, right? So this phone is where you are connecting to this speaker via Bluetooth. So for this implementation, it's Bluetooth 5.0. It creates an audio profile connection so that it recognizes it as a speaker. So any sounds that you play on the phone, be it the YouTube client or be it the sound recorder, is actually going to be playing via Bluetooth on this speaker. So how it differs from the other Sonos speakers that you might already have other than the Sonos Move is that you could only use the Sonos S2 app or Spotify Connect in those apps to play to the other Sonos speakers. So for this one, which is the Sonos Roam, same as the Sonos Move, you're able to set it up as a Bluetooth speaker so that any system sound will actually be able to come up through this, even when you're, say, playing YouTube. Bluetooth has been known to be a lossy codec, right? So basically, whatever songs or music that you're playing over Bluetooth, it will actually compress it, and there is a lossy format in the compression. So basically, you might lose a little bit of information here and there. So you could have it interpreted as a reduction in volume, in dynamic range, or even having it chopped off at the higher end or the lower end of the frequency band. So today, what we're trying to do is to try to answer the question, and to give you the summary very, very early up in the video, I will tell you that the Bluetooth connectivity of the Sonos Roam does not perform as well as a direct Wi-Fi connection. It is not to say that there is a huge difference. There is actually a very marginal difference only. So if you have some time to stay around, I'll walk you through the frequency response curves of the Sonos Roam when it's playing via Bluetooth, as well as when it's playing via Airplay 2. And for a bonus feature for today's video, I've actually paired this up in stereo so that you can see the frequency response of the Sonos Roam when it's being paired up in stereo. And heads up, is a big difference, much bigger difference than the difference between the Bluetooth and the Wi-Fi Airplay 2 connection. So let me cut over the graphs so that you can take a closer look. Okay, here you go. Now I've done the frequency sweeps ahead of time so that we don't have to waste time trying to go through those frequency sweeps. I'll turn on one at a time so you get a better picture and I can guide you through the analysis of these frequency response curves. Now the first one up, okay, this is the Sonos Roam, a single speaker on its own, using a Bluetooth connection between a Windows PC and this, okay? Volume has been set to about 60%. The distance between the speaker and the mic is set to just over 8 inches. So it is pretty close. You will tell, in fact, if you were to be testing these speakers right now, these speakers are not crazy loud. They are loud, okay? And at about 50 or 60% volume, you will hear that actually up front, when they are close to you, the sound is not too bad. So think of these speakers as personal speakers, okay? They're not supposed to be in the living room where you're supposed to fill the whole room with sound, okay? You can put it at your bedside, right? When it's about an arm's length away, it will work pretty well. If you are going to be carrying it outdoors, it can also work pretty well. Now, a note on the outdoor performance of this, you cannot use the S2 app to play any songs on this Sonos Roam when you're outdoor. Again, I'll cover that in another separate video when we talk about the Bluetooth connectivity. For today, we're just focusing on this frequency response chart. Okay, so this blue curve here for Bluetooth, yeah? So the Bluetooth connection, and this is the frequency response. Okay, over here, you'll see that this is about 80 decibels at about 70 hertz or so, right? So from 70 hertz, it will rapidly drop all the way down. If you are looking at a minus 10 dB, you are down to 48 hertz. But, reasonably, you can't expect this speaker to reproduce 48 hertz convincingly. Not at loud volumes anyway. Now, as the speakers shrink, okay, there's this technique which is computational audio. It computes the sound. It takes into account psychoacoustics, right? So at a given volume, when the sound is not that loud overall, it's able to push up the bass a little bit because the small drivers are still able to handle it, right? But the moment you raise the volume and the drivers are breaching its excursion limits. So what happens is that the software, all right, the firmware inside these small speakers, very small drivers here, they will actually pull back on the bass, right? So the overall volume, it still goes loud. Okay, when you're listening to it, it is loud, but the bass response in comparison with the rest of the sound profile at the higher frequencies, 200, 300 hertz and above, they get pulled back relatively. So you can't tell that there's a lot of bass when the volume gets high at about 80, 90, or even max out volume. But at 50, 60% volume, the bass is pretty respectable. So that's why I'm saying you don't use these speakers as a room filling sound. You use them as a personal speaker when you are at your desk, a small cubicle by your bedside, even when you are traveling outside, a small picnic. Yes, I think they actually suffice and perform reasonably well. But otherwise, if you look at the frequency response curves, I would say that you don't expect these guys to perform anything more, below 60 hertz or so. That is probably about the limit that these guys can go to. The drivers are really going to be really small, the drivers, okay? This is the size of the speaker itself. So there's a elliptical racetrack driver here, okay? So pretty small drivers. Not going to be putting out a whole lot of bass. So moving on from about actually 70 hertz onwards, it actually remains pretty flat all the way into the mid bass, carrying it up to about 600 hertz, and then it starts dipping for whatever reason. Maybe it's the room acoustic, I don't know. Before it picks up at about 3 kilohertz again. So between maybe 600 hertz to 3-4 kilohertz. There's a valley here. I don't know how to explain this, but you will hear that as a little bit of the treble being taken off. Okay, but what is respectable is that from 4 kilohertz onwards, the high frequencies, the really high frequencies, if you ask me personally, I probably won't be able to hear anything above 15 kilohertz because I'm not that young anymore. My ears are not that young. So if you try to ask me, I probably can't tell this tail end, but this tail end is actually looking pretty good. It is holding on to its high frequency, the treble energy, pretty well, all the way up to 20 kilohertz, which is respectable for something this size, battery powered. Now, moving on to the next. So obviously using the PC, I can't use Airplay 2, and the frequency sweep will need an output from the computer, either Mac or Windows, and there's no audio in jack. So the only way to connect other than Bluetooth is via Airplay 2. So I had to shift over to the Mac to do the testing. I normalized the volume out and okay, I'm going to load up the curve for the Roam using Airplay in mono, meaning to say one speaker. Same as the Bluetooth, one speaker. Why didn't I do stereo for the Bluetooth? Because in Bluetooth mode, you can't pair these for stereos. This is the frequency response chart for the Airplay, the curve in red. So as you can tell, it is actually pretty close to this in Bluetooth mode. Now, there is a slight, ever so slight increase in the bass response below about 70 hertz or so, but I would say that you probably won't be able to tell the difference. But from 70 hertz onwards, it opens up all the way right up to about 10 kilohertz. For most parts of the curve, you'll see that there is a slight dB increase, probably about 2 dB increase. If you are going to be looking here, this is about 80 and this is about 82 dB. All right, so there's a 2, maybe a little bit 2.5, 3 dB spread. Okay, that the Apple Airplay protocol has over Bluetooth using the same Sonos Roam implementation, same setup, same mic, same speaker position. So nothing has changed. The volume, I got it to as close as possible in terms of the headroom and when I was testing the setup. So this is the volume difference that you're going to be getting. The Airplay 2 is performing slightly better. Now, at this tail end here, this is 12 kilohertz. So from 12 kilohertz onwards, Airplay 2 actually rolls off the frequency quite a bit. So you're going to lose quite a bit of treble frequencies. Whether you can hear it or not, it is probably quite subjective. In my regular listening, when I'm listening to sounds, when I'm listening to music, I couldn't really detect much of a difference. So the Bluetooth as well as Airplay 2, they perform probably equally well for me. But again, this is we are talking about mono. We are talking about one speaker because I have two speakers here. And because two speakers will always sound better than one. It is a case of 1 + 1 is more than 2. All right. So I will always listen to them in stereo. And Bluetooth, you can't do stereo for the Sonos Roam. And that is a real pity. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to load up the Sonos Roam Airplay, the frequency response sweep using stereo, a pair of the Sonos Roam. And this might not surprise you, but it is a pleasant improvement. This curve in green, okay, which I'm going to highlight in yellow here so they can take a better look. Look at the frequency response. Again, I'm going to point out, right, that at the higher frequency range, 10 kilohertz and above, you are going to be looking at a dip. And I wonder why two of them are going to be performing worse than just one of them. So it could be due to my placement, where when you are placing the speakers, the frequencies could be cancelling each other out. But, you know, high frequencies are always quite difficult to catch and quite difficult to analyze because the waves are moving so fast, all right? Any slight movement, it will probably cancel each other out. And sometimes you can't even hear it by ear. So if you need instruments to measure the difference, to convince yourself that it's a better or not as good setup, then it's pointless, all right? As long as you don't hear the difference, then it's good enough. If you can hear the difference, by all means, make changes to it. But at that frequency range, I can't really hear the difference. And all I know is that a pair of these, when they are playing in stereo, they actually sound a whole lot better. Now, bass response is, well, again, the difference is not big, all right? There is a slight improvement. But if you look at this difference, it is probably about a 3 dB difference already all throughout. Now, from about 70 hertz onwards, the gap widens quite significantly throughout the entire range, all the way up to about 9 kilohertz, 10 kilohertz. Now, this difference, all right, this gap here, this 80 dB and this is 71, 72 dB, all right? This is an 8 dB difference. Technically, it's more than 4 times as loud already. And that's how you read a decibel chart, okay? But at the lower frequencies, even at the 100 hertz, all right, the difference is 85 versus 81. That's 4 dB difference. Every 3 dB difference, you get a doubling up in terms of volume. Probably not your perceived volume, but the sound energy is double up. So the bass response of a pair of these will definitely sound a lot better. Now, again, you might think that the difference is not huge here, but how frequency curves work, how the dB response, dB measurement works is that a small increase, a 3 dB increase is actually double the energy and double the volume of something which is 3 dB lower. So if you can see a 3 dB increase in these frequency charts, you're actually looking at a much louder output. So in summary, yes, there is a difference between the different connection protocol. Bluetooth doesn't do as well, but it carries the high frequency energy a lot better. And there is some kind of lossy compression over Bluetooth. Again, most of the things that we listen to today, they are likely to be streamed anyway. If you are streaming from Spotify, you are streaming from some other non-lossless platforms, you're going to be having some reduction in sound quality anyway. It's going to be compressed in any case. But for the Sonos Roam, for a speaker of this size, you're probably not going to be all out for fidelity. So I guess that really doesn't matter. Bluetooth offers a lot of convenience. You can pair your Android device, you can pair your music player, you can pair anything, including your PC, right? Which previously you were not able to unless you were using the Sonos S2 platform on the Windows platform. But now with Bluetooth connectivity, that's what you can do. So Bluetooth does bring a lot of convenience to this platform. Now, there's another trick that you can do with Bluetooth, which means you can use the Sonos Roam as a Bluetooth gateway to the rest of your Sonos system. Now, I have a Sonos Arc there. It's paired with two Sonos Sub and a pair of Sonos 5s as a surround. I can use a music player to Bluetooth into the Sonos Roam, and I can then group the sound to the Sonos Arc, and it starts playing throughout the entire room or to any other Sonos rooms in the house for that matter. So for that trick, do stay tuned, subscribe to this channel. I'll teach you a little bit more on that trick and show you how to achieve that using the Sonos Roam as the Bluetooth gateway. And this at $169, not too shabby for a Bluetooth gateway that doubles up as a Bluetooth speaker as well as a Wi-Fi speaker for the Sonos Roam. This is the cheapest Sonos Roam speaker that you can buy, and it has Bluetooth functionality. And with that Bluetooth gateway trick I'm going to teach you about, very good value. Okay, and I'll see you in my next video.